So if you caught yesterday's video about the close range meta, you kind of already have a heads up on what we're going to be talking about today with the long range meta and how there were so many various changes with the recent mid-season update to pretty much every weapon in the entire game. So it's definitely worth trying a weapon that maybe you haven't touched in a while because it will feel a little bit different. When it comes to long range TTK, there's a lot of factors to consider. Damage per mag, long range TTK are pretty important, but probably one of the most important stats is overall recoil and how easy that is to manage. For some people, Cronin Squall might be incredibly difficult to use. Other people, it's relatively easy, and it really kind of depends. Sometimes certain guns feel better on controller versus keyboard and mouse, even if they have the same recoil pattern. Some of these things will come down to preference, but I think there are a lot of great options. It kind of just depends on what you're going to be comfortable with once you get into game. And there's certain guns where maybe they have a little bit more recoil, but it's more manageable because the engagements on Vondel will be slightly shorter than, say, Al Mazrah. On DMZ, the way the mode plays is slightly different on certain ranges, so there's certain guns that will provide a little bit more coverage in a certain range than another. So when it comes to Cronin Squall, it kind of has the fastest TTK. SO14 can get a little bit faster TTK if you get some headshots in the mix. That's why there's a slash. I kind of explained that a little bit more in detail on my last video. And then the Rap H kind of comes in consistent at 900. And then we have the RAL MG, which no longer has the super fast TTK. And even when it had the fastest TTK at one point, pretty much still wasn't the meta. It was still used on niche scenarios. It was great on the floor. But overall, you wouldn't really go out of your way to build a class because they're really clunky and slow. And that's another characteristic that some people just have preference to. Some people do not care how slow. This could be the slowest weapon in the entire game and they'll still make do with it and they'll be perfectly fine. Other ones, as soon as they get stuck in a weird reload animation or something, they're just like, screw this gun, I'm done with it. So you kind of got to figure out what makes the most sense. Then we have the Sakin, Icarus, then the Cronin Squall in semi-auto. And so this is clearly the full auto. There's not really much of a reason to use semi-auto, even though it is super easy to use. So you do have the option of semi-auto there. And then we got the HCR, kind of how that lays out. And it goes all the way down. And we got a kind of good little stretch here of the TTKs between 900 and around 1200, depending on what weapon and where the shot placement is. So the Cronin Squall is not a new meta. We had it kind of for a little bit stretch there, but now it's kind of been sorted out and you got a few different options that we'll talk about today. We do have the Cronin, which I think is the #1 option currently, just because people have a little certain comfort level. It's been in the meta, but I think as people experiment with other things, we might see a little bit more of a front runner because there typically is. The Lockman 556 was a great option, but that kind of got hit with the nerf, and the Hemlock actually kind of comes out a little bit on top when those two go to head to head. But there's other options that are even better with very little recoil. So we kind of got to figure out how we want to build it out. Keeping in mind on the TTK chart, it is also kind of important how things lay out, because when you actually pick up a weapon, you're kind of like, all right, where does this fit into the meta from the floor loot? Obviously, if you're going to go get your loadout, you're always going to get the best of the best if you're really trying to be competitive. You just want to have fun, experiment with different loadouts. There's all kinds of weapons that I'm not including today that you could definitely use. M13, M4, which I think are a little bit more niche to Vondel, but in general, you could have fun with a ton of weapons currently, even if you don't go for the absolute meta, which is the Cronin, at least as of today. So we'll go ahead and start off with the very competitive part, and this is the HCR. I thought it was pretty good before. I think in some scenarios, it felt like it was a little bit more hit markery, but overall, it feels pretty good. I think it has super low recoil. This is the general build we'll go with, and it allows you to still have a pretty good recoil, rate of fire, all those things, and you'll see doesn't move very much at all. You can pretty much stay on target even at the furthest range, just beam the dude down sight. And then obviously if you're strafing and those types of things, you'll get more aim assist and you'll be able to hit a target that's moving, and it kind of has it all set up to be like that. So overall, pretty good, reliable gun, not necessarily broken in one scenario or another, but is an LMG where you get a free attachment because it already has a bigger mag of 60. And then we can go with the TAC V. So there's actually going to be two different options with the TAC V. There's one with and without the optic. So if we go over here, I already have them pre-built. This would be the TAC V. We got the TAC V with an optic, then just the regular TAC V for range. So if we look at the TAC V without an optic, we can go ahead and kind of see how this one looks in game, and we'll see how that works. I think this is more of a mid-range. The benefit of having no optic is you get the extra attachment for bullet velocity, and you can, I mean, this is kind of like one of those guns that has Very little recoil, very nice iron sights, not a lot of visual shake. It does bounce a little bit, but it's not insane and it's still super manageable. If you want to swap to the other one, I'm more of a preference of optics, so it's kind of one of those things that for range, I have a little bit more shot clarity, but you will have less bullet velocity. So I think this one works really good on Vondel because of that scenario, that you'll be able to see the target you're shooting at. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a barrel that helps with recoil control, or we'd probably go with that instead of actually using the ammunition and no optic. So that one is definitely a good one. It's still as good as it was before. Not much of a difference, but it can get a little bit wonky for some, and that's why I think it's still pretty competitive, but maybe not necessarily the meta. And here's kind of the RPK sneaking back into it. We had 100 days of the RPK. It is nowhere near as good as it was, but it is a low recoil LMG that saves an attachment on a mag and allows you to be very destructive with it. And we have gone for low recoil, high bullet velocity, and this thing will be pretty much of a laser. The damage per mag is pretty solid. You can kind of shoot your targets. It's not really going to move all that much, which is kind of one of the nice things with the gun, is if you're taking on targets at range, especially after the increased health, it's going to take a little bit more bullets, so you're able to basically unload and take out multiple targets with the one magazine, or the drum rather. And then we got the 5.45. I could have done one, like I said, on the Lockman, the Hemlock. I could have done it probably on the M13, the M4. There's a lot of good options within this variable. I just decided to go with the 5.45, which I think is also one of those good guns that has two class setups, and these ones are built pretty different. This one's more low recoil, high velocity without a suppressor, a little bit faster, and there are a lot of builds that you can do in this exact way, and you'll see the alternative pretty quickly here. But when we use this one, it's going to be a little bit more mobile, 60 round mag, which is nice. Pretty much no recoil with this build, and you're able to take on targets there rather easily. If we swap to the other one, this one has a suppressor with the Harbinger, and you can kind of see how this one's built with a barrel, so we get a little bit more bullet velocity across the way. We get a suppressor, but it will be a little bit slower, but the bullet velocity will be comparable. So you can see it is a little bit slower, but again, no recoil. And you're able to take on targets rather easily. So you got a couple different builds there depending on what you want to go with. Keeping in mind that like this, it doesn't mean like this is the only build, you can only use this. Feel free to experiment. If you like a rear grip over the FTAC Ripper, or you don't want a barrel, you want ammunition but still keep the Harbinger, do it. If you want a different optic, go for it. There's a ton of options with this. I mean, there's certain ones that are more preferred over others, but it kind of comes down to what you're going to enjoy the most. And then we got the long range meta. Again, I think the Cronin is kind of that one. I think a little bit more playtime. I haven't really seen enough people use this or experienced enough playtime to really see where this would sit and how close it is, because the Rep has a very good TTK. And it competes, and you can kind of see how it's built out there. And the fire rate feels great with this thing, and that's what's nice. It is a little bit slower. We'll see that here. But the fire rate is insane, so you can actually just laser and just shoot, and it doesn't move. But here's the recoil, a little bit slower. Maybe with fast hands, it kind of solves a little bit of that, but that is one of the major drawbacks. It is just a little bit slower as an LMG, but it ain't missing, and you could take on a lot of people. And then we get the Cronin, which is pretty much the same build that we've had forever. Kind of went with this first build, and I think it's been pretty much the same since launch. We have the Socken with the Ripper, the barrel, it all is about the same. And you can kind of see how it works, pretty straightforward. Not an insane amount of recoil, but it's one of those recoil patterns where it can kind of get away from you if you're not really in control of it. If you just spam, you're going to be less accurate the more you fire it, because it does have that little bit of randomized bouncing that happens. You can still go semi-auto, but I think they kind of put the semi-auto a little bit in check because they kind of reduced the damage a little bit, and the TTK is much slower than it was before, so you don't really have a lot of the benefit that you used to have before from going to semi-auto, like it would hit super hard. And if you want to see what the pros are using live, go ahead and check the link near the top of the description. You can check out my Twitch where I'll be live streaming. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions about the video. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.